Hello and welcome into another episode of Reality Check here on Talking Jets. What is going on? I am Matt O'Leary alongside Jeremy Jets Chaos. What is going on, my friend?
Chaos as usual. I'm in a different house. I'm trying to get acquainted with the place, but it's chaos. I don't know how to put the lights on, so that's why you can barely see me. Hello.
Okay. Is the lighting technology any different in California?
I don't know. There's a switch over there. I should try hitting that. Maybe I don't know.
The garbage disposal turns on once you hit that or something.
Exactly. And the dog, for some reason that I'm watching, yells out in pain.
Yeah, so something awful happens. But we are glad that you're here, joining us remote as always. But in a few weeks, you're not going to be remote. You're going to be in for the draft party, which we're really excited about. Want to give a shout out because we have a closing date. So tickets are available until April 16th. That's when the cutoff is. We eventually got to let the venue know how many people are coming. So you have just over 2 weeks, about 2.5 weeks to get your tickets. Jeremy will be there. I will be there. Green Bean, Ryan will be live streaming. We have open bar, food, raffles. We're raffling off tickets to a divisional game against either the Dolphins or the Patriots, winner's choice. Raffling off tickets to either the Rams or the Seahawks, winner's choice, some merch. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
I cannot wait. I think the only way I'm going to get on that stream live is if I come up behind you and grab you. So I don't know. I think Brian might be the safest person to come up and grab. You're pretty big.
Yeah,
you're pretty big. You could toss me, and Green Bean, forget about it. I'm not going near him for multiple reasons. But Ryan, what's the worst that could happen if I go up and give him a little squeeze?
Yeah, he will definitely take the kind of Green Bean. I don't know. I feel like he'll like Superman, like flip you over and put you on the table or something.
Yeah, make me smell his armpits or something.
He's a bully, a 1980s high school bully. Shove you in a locker.
Exactly.
Let's hop into this. We got a couple topics to get into today. The first thing that we wanted to do was talk about the Jets' number 10 pick because, like most things, Jeremy, people don't have very strong opinions on this. They're very open and they have, open to all these different thoughts and ideas about what the Jets should do with their first round pick. Obviously joking because it is, a very heated discussion on what the Jets should do. And right now the draft is obviously the thing that's getting talked about the most. So the overall theme, I guess, or topic of this first segment is the thought that the number 10 pick has to start. I feel like that's what gets thrown out there anytime you mention an offensive lineman being the pick at pick 10 or in the first round. I am not against drafting a weapon, by the way. I think it's you can make a reasonable case for adding a wide receiver, a Brock Bowers, someone of that caliber, but I don't like the quick dismissal of the offensive lineman isn't going to start. And that's a reason why you can't take that guy. That seems a little bit short-sighted to me. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, who made up the rule that your pick has to start? People were saying that about McDonald, and they were saying, "Oh, he's a bust. Look, he's not even starting. He's not even playing." Well, come on. If you looked at our defensive line last year, there was a reason. Now that was a little different because I don't think there was a perception that we were super thin at that position. This would be very different. If we took an offensive lineman, it's very different than the situation where we took McDonald. It's not the same thing. Even if they didn't start, we all saw what happened last year. We were decimated with injuries, where we have a left tackle who, yeah, when he plays is great, but he hasn't played in more than 14 games since 2017, I think. So to say the number 10 pick has to start, well, yeah, but think about it this way. If we pick a tackle at 10 and can't prove that they should be the number one person off the bench, because you still have to beat out Carter Warren and Max Mitchell. And as long as they do that, they're going to play. They're going to start games, because if we're being realistic, I mean, I wish it could happen, but are our two tackles both going to make it and play all 17 games?
No, I think it's almost a guarantee that they're not, especially Tyron Smith hasn't had a full healthy season since 2015. And if you look, so I'm gonna shameless promotion. I did a thread earlier this week on the Jets offensive line over the last 14 years. And if you look at it, the number of linemen they've used each year, 13, which is the most in 2023, 11, 10, 9, 11, 8, 8, 10, 7. You have to go back to 2015 for, a relatively healthy year. 6, 6, 7, 6, 6. Yeah. So they used 8+ linemen in 8 of the last 14 seasons. So that to me screams like the guy's going to get on the field, especially if it's someone who can play tackle or guard, because the chances of all your tackles and all, number one, just isolating the tackles. Morgan Moses had offseason surgery. Tyron Smith hasn't played a full season in 9 years. He's going to get snaps that way. But even AVT's gotten hurt the last 2 years and missed significant time. So I don't. What percentage, if you had to guess, let's say they take offensive line, is it crazy to say that guy might end up playing 50% of the snaps this year?
It's not crazy at all. I mean, and it makes other guys. And I like that you said that, because I was thinking on the similar lines that, it makes Fontenot changed everything, the combine with him, because when he came in with those 36-inch arm length, width, it changed everything. It made him really, really intriguing, because when you think about what you just said, we're thin both, as far as reserve, backup, interior, and in tackle on the exterior. And here's one guy who could play all four but center. And but the problem is I think 10 might be too high for him. And we need a trade partner. I mean, the perfect scenario for us, in my opinion, or one of our perfect scenarios, because I think I'm not stuck on any one. I think a great scenario is if we have a trade partner, trade back to 16, 17, get some extra picks, and we're able to get a guy like that, Fontenot guy, where his first year he can come in at tackle or guard. If there's an injury, gives us that flexibility. And then for the future, joins a core. Let's assume we're going to re-sign AVT or extend them if he stays healthy. And then we will have this new rookie with Chipman, and we'll have 60% of our line done for the future, and start to shore this thing up.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. I want to pull up NY Jet Superfans comment. Maddie, we could sign Bakhtiari or Smith. This is true. Yes, you could add Bakhtiari or Smith. Smith isn't really all that good, so I wouldn't really like to go that route personally.
Carter Warren.
Yeah, right. Which I get, and Bakhtiari when healthy is good, but there's health risk there too. But theoretically, yes, you can go the veteran route there, but that is also a Band-Aid fix, because again, Smith and Moses are on the last year of their deals, or it was only a 1-year deal for Tyron Smith, and Morgan Moses had a 3-year and is on the last year of the 3-year deal. So if they do that, Bakhtiari or Smith is also likely going to be a 1-year contract. Then you're going to be in a situation where in 2025, same thing happens. You're going to need two starting tackles probably.
Yeah, you don't want to just move forward year to year, changing your offensive line. I'm not saying it can't work, because there's no such thing as can't. There's always outliers, and things could always work out. But we went through this data and these statistics in the past. The reality is, though, you're in much better position if you could have continuity and be bringing back guys year after year.
Yeah, and again, I want to make it clear where I'm coming from. I'm not against taking a weapon here in the first round. And if they just stuck at 10 and took Brock Bowers, took a receiver, whatever, I would be okay with it. But I just don't like how it's like, and really it's for both sides, but it feels like there's a group where it's like you absolutely have to take tackle. The thought of taking a weapon is absolutely ridiculous. And then the other side of you absolutely have to take a weapon. How could you possibly argue for the offensive lineman when I don't think it A should be that way, or B has to be that way. Like,
yeah, I could
like,
debate. I could stand and debate. When you're in school and you take debates, You have to argue each side of a case sometimes, or sometimes the sides you don't want. Honestly, I could debate any of those three choices. Like right now, I'm debating the choice of offensive line, but I agree with you 100%. I don't know why everybody has to be all in on any of these, because I could debate why taking a same reason as offensive line with wide receiver, same exact reason. Mike Williams is a 1-year deal. Yeah, why not shore up our number 2 wide receiver for years to come with Garrett Wilson? You can make the same argument, and then I can go on about Brock Bowers and say what are the pros of drafting him as well. So, I think that's what this is really about, right? I mean, it's about why are people being so extreme that there's only one right thing we can do when it's so clear you can make arguments for any of these strategies.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. And that's really all that just kind of bothers me. Now, Brian, oh, sorry. I wanted to get Brian's chat up there. He sends in a super chat. Thank you so much for the chat. He says, are there any analytics or success rates of trading up versus trading down? It's going to vary by like each instance. I feel like we could try to pull that up on the fly. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit to do that. I did find in 2022, there was an article of a trade up, trade down spot. So here, let's pull this up on the screen. Let's share this instead.
I could say in our last experience, the trade up for JJ and the trade up for Breece Hall worked out pretty well.
It did work pretty well. So this says, although most would infer that a trade up would result in more immediate success, the graph shows that the most common outcome after the first year is that the trade down team improving their record and the trade up team lowers their. A major unpleasant sight for proponents of trade ups is the lack of data points in the upper 2 quadrants, which each represents the trade up team improving their record. Only 7 of the total 24 teams which traded up kept or improved their record after the first year, whereas double that amount did so for teams that traded down. So this tends to believe, and this is up until 2022, I believe. That's when the data was, or the article was published. I want to see if it says from how big of a sample it's looking at. I can't find it quickly here, but it tends to say that trading down is more beneficial for teams, because I guess, like in theory, right, if you move down, more swings than moving up and having to give up those draft assets. But I don't think you should look at it necessarily that way. Like, I think it's circumstantial depending on where you are in your process, right? Do you agree?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's hard to go too much on that, in my opinion, because I think you have to look at the needs of the team and the deal in itself. Like, if you're a team that is trading down because you have a lot more needs, and you have a team that's trading up for a quarterback and they hit, so that has to do with it too. It's like, like with San Francisco, if Trey Lance worked out and he's a star, then it was a good trade. It didn't, so it was a horrendously bad trade. So sometimes it's hard, you have to look at each case because it depends on if the player worked out or not, and whether or not it ended up being a good trade. So I think it's a little bit more complicated because it depends on how much you believe in a player. I think, for us, the trade down, I don't care what the statistic would say, that what's going to determine if it's right or wrong is you have to hit on whoever you pick after you trade down. That goes without saying. So if you take Latham, if you take Fontenot, it has to work. They have to hit. And that's what everybody's forgetting, even if you go with number 10. All this arguing, but what's really important is whoever you take has to hit. That's the key, that we don't throw away the pick completely. But if you hit, then of course the trade down was the right thing to do, because now you have the second round pick, or the third round, the extra picks.
Yeah, and Buffalo Jet Fan did a video earlier this week that I really loved, where he was talking about, like, all this arguing right now is so silly, because it's, if they get a stud at whatever position, whether it's the offensive line, wide receiver, Brock Bowers, whatever, and they're good right away, nobody's going to care. Like, no one's going to care about it. Like, here's a good example. my philosophy for the Jets in the 2022 draft, I wasn't really a big they should go cornerback at pick number 4 with
No.
Sauce Gardner. Now, that wasn't an anti-Sauce Gardner take. I liked him. He was my number 1 corner in that draft, but the positions I wanted to fill were edge rusher and wide receiver. Now, granted, because of trades, they end up doing both of those things anyway, which made it that much nicer, but I love having Sauce Gardner on this team, and I'm not going to go, 3 years later, be like, oh, the Jets should have taken, insert player here instead. Like, if you draft somebody and it turns out that they're good, 3 years from now, I'm not going to go, oh, well, they could have had whatever offensive lineman if Brock Bowers is, George Kittle for the next 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that it's funny because as much as people say fire JD, look how he's changed the fan base. It's like almost like he's gotten the fan base to forget that number 1 picks don't always work out. It's because everybody's screaming, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. And I think you're 100% right. No matter who number 10 is, if we pick somebody at number 10 and they hit, it doesn't matter what position it is. You've got to be happy that we hit, because that's the real thing that has to happen. Before it having to be the right position, the right this or the right that, you've got to be right. You've got to be right about the play you take, because if they don't make an impact, that could set an organization back a year or two. Like, it really be painful when you take a valuable asset like a number 10 pick and throw it away and a guy who never pans out. We learned that from Zach Wilson. We threw away, we ended up burning a number 2, and it set us back. Look what it's done. Can you imagine if he would have been successful and been a star quarterback, the difference it would have made?
Yeah, it would a drastic difference. John chimes in and says, like it or not, Bowers is inevitable. I think Bowers is absolutely on the table, but I'm not ready to go and say that it's inevitable that it's going to happen. Do you feel that way?
No, nothing about JD is inevitable. I mean, if we haven't figured that out from him taking McDonald at 15 and Sauce Gardner at 4, I mean, come on. If he hasn't proven yet that he's a best player on his board guy, I don't know what proves it. He is 100% the best. They draw up a board, and they have a power board, and they stick to it. And I think a lot of the people that are saying Bowers to the Jets, you have to understand they're NFL analysts. They don't go into every team as deeply as we dig into that team for the most part. So they just look at team need. They look at this, they look at that. And they said, that's the best weapon at 10. The Jets need offense. And they're just, a lot of people just putting, inking Bowers in there. But the reality is, are they really looking at the history of the GM and, the philosophy of the GM? Are they looking that deeply into the scheme? Because JD seems to like all-around players when it comes to tight end. He likes players that do both, that are in line and could line up in the slot. And Bowers would be, would go anti versus the tight ends he's pursued in the last few years.
Not what would you do? This is a what do you think is going to happen right now, as of March 28th. If you had to guess what the most likely outcome in the first round is, what do you think? Again, not what would you do, but what do you think it's going to be as of today?
My guess. I feel, and this is not what I would do, but I like necessarily, like you said, I think it's hard to find a trade partner as much as I want it. So I'm not going to say it's more likely than we won't, because I don't even know if JD wants that, and we'd have to have somebody willing to do it, and the deal would have to work out and be fair. So I'm going to say the way my gut instinct tells me it's going to work out is that we're going to take an offensive lineman at 10.
I agree. I think that's the slight favorite right now on what I think is going to happen. They absolutely could take a receiver. They could take Brock Bowers. They could trade up or down. JD has a ton of options, but if I had to make my guess of right now, I think I could see them going on the offensive line. I think if it was at 10, I think it would be Fuonga would be my guess.
Yeah, I have no complaints about that. I know there are people that would, but not me. I'm not one of the people that would be upset about a move like that. I would be okay with a lot of them. Like if Fashanu slipped, I'd be okay with Latham. One of the things I like about Latham is what people don't see is he also is one of those guys who, even though I don't know if he's played a lot of it, his skill set easily leads me to believe that if he was our swing tackle or the tackle that was, the backup tackle, he also could be a backup guard. Like I think that Latham has that skill set. If you look at his biggest strengths, and Tigo helped point that out. I actually watched film with Tigo, and it was very evident the way he locks arms, the way he locks up. Latham is a power guy. He has a great anchor. He could definitely, move into the guard slot as well. So I would be okay with that pick as well. There's a bunch of those guys that I think I'd be okay with.
Dano says you can trade down easily if you insist and then don't price gouge. I think what you have to do is what team is moving up, or what is a team going to move up to 10-4, I think is what you would have to find. Now, if there's a ton of offensive guys going off the board in the top 9 or so, would a team want to move up for maybe like the first corner off the board to where the Jets are at 10? Or I don't know. I did a mock with Richie today, and the Saints ended up trading up because they wanted an offensive lineman. They traded up to 10, and they took Fuanga, and then Bowers was still there at 14, and that's who we ended up with taking. But like, I'm trying to think of scenarios what teams behind the Jets would be trading up for. Do you have any thoughts on potential teams and what they could be looking at? I'll pull up the draft order while we do this.
Yeah, I mean, look, the one thing that's hurt us lately and hurt this take is for a long time it looked like JJ McCarthy would be around, right? And over the last few months, no surprise to me, I mean, it's one of the things we've been talking about for a long time. As I've been saying, keep your eye on JJ, keep your eye on JJ. He's moved up the board. So if the 4 quarterbacks go early in the top 5, it's going to be much harder to pick why somebody would trade up. But you have to remember, if the first 8 or 9 guys are offensive players, you could have a team that's in love with Dallas, Clark, or Turner. What's his name? Dallas
Turner. Dallas Clark's the tight end.
Right. You could have a guy that's in love with Dallas Turner. You could have a guy that's in love with Versa. I mean, like there might be a team that is willing to say, hey, I'll give up my second round pick right now to move up 5 or 6 slots and get the number 1 defensive guy in the draft that I want, the guy that's highest on my board, because I think there's a team in front of me that's going to do it if I don't right now. That's possible. I mean, the best scenario would be you have a guy like, Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy available, slip down to 10. And that's the best scenario, because then you have got teams like Denver, teams like Seattle, teams like Minnesota. I mean, there are teams that you could easily see wanting to trade up and grab a quarterback.
How about Dave from New Brunswick says, I could see the Bengals trading up for Bowers. They do have a second round pick. So would you slide back? Where are they? I just had them up 18. Would you slide down to 18 for their second round pick, which I believe is 48?
Depends on how I read the board.
Okay.
It depends on how JD reads the board. If he reads the board that one of the offensive tackles that he wants or linemen will be there, or if he's okay with Brian Thomas Jr. receiver, like as long as he believes that one of the guys in that category, like he'll have he'll section off his guys into groups. So he might have this tier, like the tier 1 obviously won't be there, right? Like the Joe Alt, the Marvin Harrison, but he might have like a second tier of really good, high quality players that he's happy with. And as long as he's reading the board in a way that one of those guys will be there, then I think it's an okay thing to do, and you better be right. And you better get one of those guys, and then you better hit with the second round pick. And if you hit with the second round pick also, if you hit with both those picks, it will never go to question. You are good forever if you hit with both those picks. Somebody had asked about Bowers' speed. Bowers ran a 4.5, I believe, and which is phenomenal for someone his size.
That is great for someone his size. 4.5, you absolutely take that. It's 18 and 49 would be the 2 picks. So you slide back 8 spots, pick up pick number 49. So you do get 2 swings in the top 50, but it's risky to fall down that far. But if you're getting another pick in the top 50. I would consider it. I know there's going to be a lot of people upset if they did that, if they moved out
Oh, yeah.
and Bowers was the pick at pick 10 to the Bengals.
Yeah, I think that they would probably have to maybe they would throw in a 4th rounder next year or a 3rd round. They might have to sweeten it up a little bit. It would just depend on how much the Bengals wanted to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, you get emotional. It's hard not to. They could see it. Oh, he's thinking about it. It's really close. What can I give? It's very, GMs do it all the time, and they'll just pick something for the next year and say, "We'll throw this at you," and it might make it point worthy. I mean, it just depends on who JD loves. He might have guys that he loves that he projects to be there, and he might think Brian Thomas Jr. or Ida Noy Smith, the wide receiver, like he or Mitchell. Was it?
AD Mitchell. Yeah.
See, I'm trying to remember 1,000 names, 200 names of guys in this draft. But there are a lot of people that think he could be, he's a top 3 receiver on their boards.
Yeah, I like AD Mitchell a
Yeah.
lot. Troy Franklin, Brian Thomas Jr. There's a bunch of names. Who knows? Maybe for
Latin
time
content.
ends up pulling.
Yeah, so I mean, like we don't know who has who, like how high they have these guys on the board. We see it every year. We see guys that we thought were going to go in the 2nd round go with the 18th pick. So you just don't know. So I trust. I think JD has proven that he's pretty good at reading the board.
Yeah, in most cases, I would agree with you there. And yeah, like remember what was it 2 years ago when the Patriots took Cole Strange in the 1st round? So he was supposed to go in like the 3rd round. Like weird stuff happens. So
Yeah.
it's not impossible to slide back and still get a good player.
Yeah. No, definitely not. I mean, you just never really know. I mean, because there was I think a year ago, there was a wide receiver who went 16, 17. That was a shock that went in the top 20. I'm forgetting who it is right now. I think Green Bay took somebody just a lot higher up, maybe Romeo Dobbs.
Lucas Van Ness?
Or a couple of years ago, wide receiver, I think it was Romeo Dobbs.
Oh, okay.
I think they took him a lot earlier than people expected.
Yeah, that stuff happens though. As you said, it's a crapshoot. Everyone has their own boards. Guys go earlier than you think. The Jets usually they're good for a day 3 pick that no one's heard of. Like I think last year's was the linebacker. Who's the linebacker that they took? Oh my god. Zaire Barnes. I feel he wasn't someone who was really projected to get drafted, and he went in the 6th round, pick 184. So you never know. Weird stuff happens.
Yeah, all the time. So, yeah, I what's really cool is that we could talk about it and project and do all these things, but we don't actually have to be the one making the decision. So no matter what happens, our worst case scenario is that we have to say, "All right, Casey Doug, you're right. I was wrong. I was nuts to say it. You were right. That was a horrendously bad pick," and then move on. But if you're JD, you're looking for a new job. So it's like it's very different when you're the person that actually has to make the pick and the choice,
It makes a big difference. Green Spicy pops in and says, "Do you guys think that we can fill all our holes that we got left with this draft class?" I think there's still going to be more ads in free agency as well. Like when I was on with Richie before at 1:00 on that stream, we had some comments where it's like, "Oh, you didn't get, whatever, like safety, interior defensive line, edge, RB2. These are all those things you could also add in free agency." So I think it's going to be a mix of both, but it can be done is my takeaway on this. How do you feel?
Yeah, like running back is the least of my concerns. I would love to grab the right guy. I mean, like I'm okay with whether it comes via free agency or the draft. Free agency would be more, you already know the ceiling. So there's no hope the guy's going to be any better than what he's been. And that's always the more exciting part about a draft pick. But there's also a floor, a guaranteed floor of what you have a better idea of what you're getting. There's plenty of time. I mean, just signing, we haven't re-signed Connor McGovern, which would be like an example of it would be a really nice move as far as where we stand right now at center. I like him better than Wes.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen a lot of these guys sign late and sign after the draft. The Jets signed Morgan Moses really, really late that offseason. Dalvin Cook, that one didn't work out, but that was a late signing. It's just because it's 3 weeks now, 4 weeks removed from the initial push of free agency, like they're still going to be able to add more depth to the roster. So Johnny's been putting this out there. I know he was saying it earlier, but trade back and let's get McConkey. I know that you're a big Lad McConkey guy. Would you move back and get him in the first round?
I would rather have it be something like we trade back, get some ammunition, get somebody like my a happier formula for me would be to get a guy like Fuaga or Latham or Fontenot, right? Am I saying his name right? I hope I'm not mispronouncing it too bad. But to get a guy like that, get the second round pick, maybe take one of our fourths, throw it with that second round pick, move up enough to get a guy like McConkey. Like I think that's the way I'd rather have it work out, that we got a player and we got McConkey, as opposed to we start by taking McConkey, because that would involve a trade back. That would be a very far trade back.
Yeah, that would be probably late 20, maybe like 30, like very, very end of the first round. There's a chance he sneaks into the second, like, I don't know, one of those top before, like, I don't know, less than pick 40, picks 33 to 39, somewhere in that range. But I think that's probably more like if you move back with that scenario we just did with the Bengals, you move back to 18. Let's say you get Fontenot or someone of that ilk there, and then you pick up the second round pick at pick 49, and then you're making some sort of package to jump from 49 to 35 and getting McConkey there. I think would probably be the most likely way of doing it.
Yeah, I think that would be the better way of doing it, because the one thing we have to all understand is, with these holes that we're trying to fill, the one that you would be very difficult, especially as plug and play, to fill, almost impossible, is tackle.
Yeah.
Offensive tackle is just not there after pick 20. We have to assume maybe the best you're going to do is 𝐻𝐿Ton, somewhere between 20 and 26. And there's nothing written in stone that 𝐻𝐿Ton can't come in and be plug and play. Like he might come in and be ready in midseason to come in for a guy who's injured for a few games. Nobody really knows. We've had tackles go in the 6th round that have come in and played excellent football. So 𝐻𝐿Ton has a lot of the tools already. He's a great prospect. He's just not a guy that you want to count on, because he probably has some more. He has to work on strength, and get his strength up. But it doesn't mean it's impossible that he can't use his other skill sets to still get by and be very serviceable. So because of that, that's why I want to get the offensive line, the tackle position, out of the way if we don't sign someone before the draft, because I feel like in the second round, you can get a wide receiver a lot easier if we make a trade.
I tend to agree with that logic. I love this comment from Dane, who says, is he a young lad, this McConkey? A young lad, McConkey. 22 years old. He'll be 23 this year. So young lad McConkey fits.
I'll tell you what, he was something to watch live.
Yeah, he's going to be a good one. I see him going to like the Chiefs with the last pick in the first round. That's when I do mocks. So that's usually where I end up putting him.
That would make them very dangerous.
Yep. No, it absolutely would. Anything else on the Jets in the draft before we get into our second topic of the day here?
I think we just leave it at the reality check here is everybody should have their takes. I don't think that this is the time we need to be debating and fighting and insulting and calling each other names over these takes, because like it's not one of those things where one is so bad over the other. Like it's like we're never going to be on the same page, so it doesn't make sense to fight over it.
I'm with you. I wish we would stop all this infighting. Let's get to the second thing, this alleged Robert Saleh and Woody Johnson beef that was since squashed. But Woody Johnson came out with a tweet right before we got started. And he says, all this nonsense about a heated argument between Coach Saleh and me at the league meeting is absolutely false. It is yet another irresponsible report from the NFL Network. Please disregard. I just thought this was a hilarious tweet, Jeremy. I don't know, like reading it in his voice, I think just makes it a little bit funnier for me, but I'm glad that he put the kibosh on this one.
Yeah, a lot of people say, like, don't say anything. That's the way to handle something like this. I don't agree. I think it's okay to communicate with the fan base. I think it's okay to say, hey, this didn't happen. It's ridiculous, and let it sit there. And I think that if there was a big argument or a big fight, he wouldn't have come out with that tweet at all. He would have said something like, if he made any comments, it would have been just something like, discussion is healthy. Emotional discussion, passionate discussion can be very healthy, and it can actually make a relationship. He'd come up with some kind of witty thing like that. But the reason he wouldn't deny it is because then he'd look really stupid if some video came out of it or something.
He would. He absolutely would. Someone else had a pretty good tweet about it too that I wanted to pull up. Someone by the name of Jets Chaos says, in a world where everyone over 8 years old carries a video recorder on them in their smartphone, nobody in a crowd of people, including reporters, captured an NFL coach in a heated argument with an NFL team owner. Are we supposed to be this stupid? This made me laugh this morning when I read this, or this afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, it's like because people react with emotion instead of common sense. Like, you're literally in a room full of reporters. Do you know how fast everybody would be pulling out their phone to show that fight?
Yep.
I mean, to video that fight and get hold of that fight. And for anybody saying, yeah, well, it could have been fast and you have to pull out your phone, you don't think there were already, I've been in rooms like that at the Senior Bowl. I've been in rooms like that. There's always someone filming something there. There are people meeting people and they're filming it. They're shaking hands and meeting it. They're asking questions to the coaches and the owners, and they got their phone out and they're filming it. It's constant. So it literally would have taken, there must have been, I guarantee you at that moment, at any moment during that reception, there was multiple phones recording interviews, recording people, meeting people. If a heated fight broke out, when in our society right now, the way our society is, wouldn't have everybody turned those phones and zoomed in on that? So not one video has leaked. How could that be?
I like it. Peter says, well, you would argue too if you just wanted to get the lunch order right. I said roast beef. LOL. Now, Jeremy, that feels like something, if potential food disaster like getting an order wrong is on the table, that's something that I could see you arguing or raising your voice over.
Only if the mistake was giving me fish or something that didn't taste good.
Fair.
If I order something, you give me the wrong hero. Oh, I ordered chicken cutlet parm. You gave me a meatball parm. If that meatball parm is good, it's not going to get heated. It's going to be fine.
No Skill says, if you're going to report every time Woody has a conversation with someone and things get awkward, you're going to work overtime. Probably a fair point with Woody Johnson. I wanted to get your take while we're on the topic of Woody Johnson. He, at these owners meetings earlier in the week on Monday, seemed to walk back his Zach Wilson comments where, 6 weeks ago at the Super Bowl, he said that they didn't roster a backup quarterback. And now he says, I don't know if we're to believe him or not. I guess we can get into that. They're not just going to cut Zach Wilson, that he's an asset, and they're looking to get something back. What do you make of, that part of Woody Johnson speaking out at the owners meetings?
I think that he probably was very subtly told by somebody who is allowed to talk to him in any way they want and say it to him. Otherwise, he's an adult. He could have realized that on his own. I think at some point he came to the realization that when you're trying to trade an asset, you probably shouldn't do everything in your power to completely devalue that asset.
Yes. It was dumb. I roasted him at the time. I said, like, why would you come out and say that? Not that, his thought process was necessarily wrong, but you don't do that, especially if you're trying to move off the guy. And I don't know, like, if it came down to it, let's say nobody wants to trade for Zach Wilson before the draft or even during the draft weekend. Do you think they would actually keep him on the roster, or do you think Woody would swallow his pride and they'd actually cut him?
And by the way, that's a mistake. Like anything he said, that's like anything he promised or said wouldn't or would happen is a mistake.
Yeah,
you should never say that. Like you should never say we're not going to cut him. Then we'll keep him. I mean, he could backtrack by just saying, and he could just be honest. He could literally at the end when people say after they cut him, say you said you wouldn't cut him, and he could just look and say we were trying to trade him. Of course, I had to do everything to keep his value up as high as possible. Like, you could literally admit it. Say,
Sure.
yeah, I said that because if I said we cut him, then every team that might be interested in trading for him would say, oh, we could just wait for them to cut him. Like, he goes, like, it's always okay to lie when you're playing the negotiating game,
Sure.
right?
No,
Your fans are always going to forgive you for that. It's like, of course, I'm not going to admit that we're going to cut him.
yeah, it's very, very hard for me to see a scenario where he comes back in that door at One Jets Drive after 3 years, everything that happened this whole offseason. They bring in another backup quarterback. It seems like from their conversations too, it sounds like they want to add another like young guy on the roster, like a draft pick this year, potentially at some point, not necessarily an early pick, but I just don't see how they bring him back in. It'd just be like, all right, man, like it didn't work out. Let's cut ties. You try to figure it out somewhere else. We're gonna move on too. But I would be stunned if he's actually back in the building this year.
Yeah, I can't. You know what? As much as I think it's bad for the locker room and it would be awkward, I actually say this because I don't take anything. I'm not going to ever be against somebody personally
Mhm.
unless they do something personal. Zach Wilson didn't work out, but it's not personal. I don't
No,
dislike the human being. The human being didn't purposely not work out. The human being wanted to be a great quarterback. So, almost in just as a fellow human being, I would not wish that on somebody because I can't imagine how it would feel for him to have to be in that locker room for any amount of time. That is not fair to wish on anyone because that's just humiliating.
yeah, no, that right. And like for the player at that point, like again, you're kind of just it would be doing right by him by just moving on. And I don't know. I don't know what his future holds, but was curious your thoughts on Woody Johnson obviously coming out. Dakota says cut Zach, keep Lisa. I would say the opposite, man. Like I don't think Lisa Wilson really helped her cause or Zach's cause while they were here. Especially remember she called Jet fans toxic last year. Now, granted, there could be some Jet fans who go way over the line. I'm not saying that there aren't toxic Jet fans, but categorizing the whole group as toxic while your son's still the quarterback of the team is not going to help anyone's cause.
It's amazing the power of context with one word, right? Like you could put the word "some" Jet fans are toxic.
And no one would have batted an eye. We'd have been like, "Yep, agree." If that DM was like, "It's really hard on him. Some of this fan base is just way too toxic," we would have all sympathized and been like, "Yep, 100%." But once you say this fan base is toxic and categorize us all in that light,
Yeah,
that's it. That's where it goes too far.
it's always the mistake. Overgeneralizing is always a mistake.
That's the truth.
Mhm.
Tony, the GM, is in here too. Says Zach would be the practice squad quarterback for the Jets or for anybody. I don't even think that. Like I wouldn't want to do that to him. Like I just don't. I think you just got to. It's like a dark cloud kind of hanging over this organization, right? Like this second overall pick just clearly did not work out. He had to play again in year 3 when he wasn't even supposed to play in year 3. It's not going to work for him here. Like again, I don't know if that's maybe just me being too stubborn on it, but I think I would rather just cut him and move on than be like, all right, well, I guess we'll keep Zach around as the 4th quarterback and put him on the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean we've seen enough of him. I know people have this fear of, oh, he'll go somewhere else and be good. And you know what? Even if he did, it doesn't matter. It's not going to happen here. It's like even when he came in here and he played well against Philly and Kansas City and he was holding his own, it wasn't great. It wasn't for a whole 4 quarters, but he did some good things. The reality is though, at some point he has shown that he unfortunately gets into his head and he just falls apart. You know, if that's something that can be fixed somewhere else, fine. But at some point, you can't be the team that's just waiting for it year after year to happen.
Yeah.
Like some other team could take their turn and hope that he's going to somehow mentally put it together and be able to be a football player.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Superfans back says, Maddie, unless you have kids, it's not easy to understand how much it hurts when your kids are getting harassed or insulted. I don't disagree with that. I'm sure it would. I don't have kids, but I mean, both Jeremy and I work on the internet. We both had terrible, horrible things DM to us, said to us, commented to us, and neither of us have $1 million in the bank account to make that sting a little bit less and have the generational wealth. So I do feel for him, right? Like I don't want to come off completely cold hearted, but like I don't know. It's still not a great look.
I mean, look, you're a very public figure. You're the mother of this quarterback, and I'm not saying. I think that deep down we understand her sentiment. I'm saying she used the wrong words.
Yeah,
she should have just written some Jet fans are toxic. Like we understand why she was upset, and we sympathize with her that people did horrible things to her. We're just saying when you write this fan base instead of some, it's offensive. Obviously, now you're going to offend a lot of people because you're grouping us in with the people who did that. Like, so that's the issue. And no matter how upset you are, you can make big mistakes. You can ruin your life doing text, posts like that, overgeneralizing because somebody did something to you and making it a group thing that it's everybody that person might fall into.
Yep, I'm with you on that. Let's see. Dakota says Isaac Guerrero for RB2. Gator asked early on. We didn't pop it up because we had a bunch of other things that we wanted to get into too. I don't know if Gator's still in here, but Gator wanted us to talk about RB2 as well. What's your take on running back 2? Where do you think that gets filled? The NFL draft? Do you think it happens in free agency? If so, is there a name that really jumps out to you that you would want to see fill that role?
Well, I mean, it does seem that Joe Douglas likes to draft running backs.
He does.
And I understand why. I think that, like, what's happened to the game of football, there's great value in it. Like, you'll get running backs that used to be first-round running backs that are drafted in the middle of the second round sometimes. Not last year. Last year was kind of weird, but there are years where you'll get running back, but you'll get running backs that used to be first, second-round draft picks that are now fourth, fifth round picks. The position's less valued, which makes it a value. When you could use a fourth round pick and get a guy that historically would have been a late first or early second round pick, you're getting a quality football player in the mid to late rounds. It's very tempting to do it. Like, I think like that Michael Carter, I know it didn't turn out the right way, but there was a time where he would have been an earlier pick. He would have been a second round pick. So that's why I think Joe Douglas does it. I think he just likes the fact that he doesn't have to go early on a running back, and later in the draft, he's able to look and see these talented guys and take a shot.
Yeah. I think I would prefer to go the veteran route this time. It's a popular name that's getting tossed around there, but Ezekiel Elliott is kind of fills something the Jets don't have in a short yardage back and a good pass protector as well. I'm not saying he's anywhere close to the guy he was in Dallas, but if you can get him for $2 million, 𝐒𝐮𝐫𝐞𝐞 does your speedster home run threat, and Breece Hall is your main guy. I think you could live with that room. Can they take a guy in the draft? Yeah. They could. They've done it, or Douglas has done it just about every single year he's drafted. So it's a possibility, but I would like, I think, a veteran presence added to the room. Green Bean is in here. It says Woody and Saleh love each other almost as much as Jeremy and Green Bean love each other. Right, Jeremy?
Yeah, it's hot and cold. Depends on the moment, When things are going well, we love each other. When things are going bad, Green Bean's threatened to throw me off the channel.
Kick him out. Right out of there, baby. Oh, goodness gracious. Things you just absolutely love to see. Hennessy says RB2 will be a rookie, so he's with you on that one. He agrees.
Yeah, I don't know that's 100%, but I'm just going by the tendency of the GM,
Papa Yeti says our RB2 is eating tacos in Arizona. I'll get over it eventually in a season or two, but I'm still salty. I don't know. I'm not losing a ton of sleep on losing Michael Carter. I know they did give up on him relatively quick. I would have rathered cut Dalvin Cook or traded Dalvin Cook than what they did with Michael Carter at the time, but he wasn't very good the last 2 years in 22 and 23.
It just, something was going on with him. Like it was weird because I really loved him his rookie year.
Me too. Me too. Jeremy doesn't love green bean anymore. He's in love with Coach 𝐿'𝐵𝐷. That's got to be your number one home slice, right? Is 𝐿'𝐵𝐷, I would say.
I've got love for everybody, but it's like when with children. Those of you who are parents would understand. You don't run out of love. You have love for everybody. But Coach 𝐿'𝐵𝐷 has a very nice little room in my heart. Because I love a team with a good defense. But no, I love green bean. I love green bean very much, especially butter sautéed on a pan.
Butter and sautéed on a pan. We got time for a few more comments in here before we hop out for the day. Dakota says that Drake May is a bust incoming. I want to get your take on Drake May. And then if not him, is there a quarterback who you think is going to go in the first round that's not going to work out? And who is that?
I don't know. He's kind of a bubble pick. Like he might go in the first round. He might not go in the first round. And that's initially he was supposed to. And on some boards, he's top 15. Bo Nix is the guy I would be the most surprised if he had any kind of career. I'm going to say it like that. Because I'm not going to beat up these kids up. I mean, to me, it's all about lack of evidence. It's never about proof. Like, there's none of these guys that played or done anything in college that would make me say it's absolute proof they can't play in the NFL, because they're all young and any of these traits, any of these things could develop, especially with NFL coaching. So you never really know. But to me, out of all the quarterbacks, he has the least evidence that he could succeed in the NFL. He is as far as doesn't have the full route tree, cannot make all the throws, cannot play under pressure, falls apart. And then most of his production has been something I think any college quarterback could have done.
Yeah.
A lot of short passes to guys right in front of him, 5 yards, a lot of yards after catch. I wouldn't agree that Drake May is a bust incoming, but he could be.
Sure.
I mean, anybody could be. One thing I learned about quarterback is it's a freaking crapshoot. You could be in love with the quarterback and think they are going to be the biggest superstar ever, and then you got Jamarcus Russell, right? So you just never really know. But I'll tell you one thing about Drake May. He's a fantastic athlete, and and I got tons of film with him making all the catches. He could do every kind of throw in the NFL. Doesn't mean he's automatically going to be successful, but the one thing you can't take away from him is he can make every throw.
The guy that scares me a little bit, I'm not saying that he can't be good, but Jaden Daniels, I think, has the potential to have a low floor. He has a high ceiling also, but I think he takes hits and unnecessary risks sometimes, and I worry of how well that's going to translate. So I think he's one of the guys who has to go to a really good spot. But like if he ended up in New England, honestly, like I don't know if New England has the offensive infrastructure to get the most out of him. So of that crop, Daniels, I think, scares me. I think people are a little too hard on Caleb Williams. I know that's kind of like the hot thing right now is to shit on Caleb a little bit because he's a little different, but I think he's a very good prospect. And like anyone, can he bust? Yeah, any of these guys can bust. But to me, I think Caleb's getting a little too much unnecessary hate right now.
Yeah, I just think the only concern with him is, and I don't know how real it is, I'll admit, because you can't trust the media. But if it's true, there's some things that have come out in the media that would concern me about him, not as a player, but as a human. Like I don't know how much of it is his agents, how much of it is embellished by the media. But I worry a little bit about anybody who says they should have part ownership of a team before they take an NFL snap. Like I don't know how true that is, but if there seems to be players already talking to him and trying to straighten him out, and that kind of concerns me. When you have like the Bears, sending videos out of players telling him you got to prove yourself in this league, like the fact that things like that. I mean, I would, if I'm a GM, I'm definitely looking into that.
That's fair. Mike D's with a big super chat. I think this is a good place to close out with Mike's super chat. The injury stuff outside of Smith is overblown. Every team has concerns. Burrow blew his knee out and they drafted Chase. Jets are such a hot topic to make lazy ass takes on. I'm good any draft scenario, honestly. I think that's a fair point to talk about, that any route that they go is a good one. Smith is definitely an injury concern though, because he hasn't done it, but I get that every team has concerns, and there isn't. And I think this is maybe the big takeaway from Mike's comment here. There is no guarantee perfect solution that you're going to be like 3 deep at every single spot. You're going to go into the season with some risks, and the teams that win the championship, sometimes luck just breaks on their side, and the Jets are going to have to get some good luck, I think, injury wise.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point that Mike brings up, and thank you for the super chat. I think that one thing you have to understand is the one thing I'll say is I don't know if it's lazy, if I call it lazy, with this fan base. I think with this fan base, I would call it traumatized.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that it's okay for you what you're saying. Like, you could say, hey, get over it. It happened. It was bad luck, but every year is new and the odds and everything. There's no like. It's okay to not believe in jinxes. To say it doesn't matter if you lost 8 poker hands in a row. It's like you come back and win 8 in a row. Like that kind of argument. But we've been traumatized. So it's not laziness. I think it's just a fan base that, if you look at just the history of the team, if you've been a fan a long time, or even the last 2 years with the offensive line, it just feels like we can't get through a game without an offensive lineman going down.
Yep. I'm with you. And again, that's not enough for me to say that, they definitely have to go offensive lineman. No, if they go weapon, I'm going to be excited about it because the Jets are going to get an exciting piece for this offense. I think I'm willing to say I think I could speak for you on this one as well. As long as it's something on the offensive side of the ball. I don't want to see an edge rusher. I don't want to see interior defensive linemen. Try to help out this offense and get the Jets going in the right direction and end the playoff drought. That's the most important, end this playoff drought. So any closing thoughts here on this, again, a lovely episode of Reality Check, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with what you said. This team needs offense, and we need to score points. So there's no question in my mind that it would be very upsetting if we didn't go offense. I don't care how the board falls. We need to really commit to it and commit to scoring points for a change. But I will say, I don't think we should be fighting over this. I think that we've had a great offseason so far. Really happy with the moves. And I think we need to remember every single team has concerns going into a season. Nobody has all pro guys at every position.
Yep.
Like, you could pick apart any team and pick out problems. So there's going to be some stone that's going to be left unturned, something that's not going to be perfect. And that's just the way it's going to be, because it's economics, resource and need and availability.
There you go. I think you nailed it. That's a great place to end it. Stop fighting with each other, Jet fans. Please stop fighting. Make sure to subscribe before you go. I'm Matt. He's Jeremy, and we'll catch you next time.